working on a map scaling worksheet. And when you're scaling, you're using a larger or smaller object to represent something in the real world. And today, we're using this map to represent an actual town. So it's a smaller version of the town. So let's take a look at the directions. The directions say Axel had to spend 1 week at his grandmother's house. Below is a map of the town. Use the scale to answer the distance questions below. So here's the scale right there. It says 1 square equals 800 feet and 5,280 feet equals 1 mile. And the questions are down here. All answers should be in feet unless stated. Any answers in miles should be estimated to the nearest tenth. And the nearest tenth is the first place after the decimal. So that's the nearest tenth. So we have to do a little bit of rounding. So this is actually a level 2 worksheet because we're going to have to convert some of the answers into miles and we're going to have to round. So it's a little more difficult. So let's take a look at the problems. Day 1. His grandma picked him up from the airport. About how many miles is the airport from her house? So here's the airport and here is her house. Round the answer to the nearest tenth. And the question says miles. So we're going to need to find out how many squares, then calculate that into feet, and then divide that answer by 5,280 to calculate how many miles. So let's get started. The airport is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 squares. So we take 10 squares and we're going to multiply that by 800 because each square is worth 800 feet. So we're going to multiply this by 800. Now, most of you should know this already. When you're multiplying with multiples of 10, like 10, 20, 30, 40, 800, you don't have to worry about the zeros until you're done. So basically, all this problem is saying is 1 times 8 is 8. So we get 8. And you see this 0 right here, this 0 right here, and this 0 right there. We just put it back in when we're done. So we get 8,000 feet. Now we're not done yet because we have to convert that 8,000 feet into miles. So if we come up here really quick, we have 5,280 feet, which equals 1 mile. And we're going to divide 8,000 by 5,280 feet. That'll tell us how many of those feet will go into 8,000. And every time it goes in once, that'll be 1 mile. 2 times is 2 miles. 3 times is 3 miles. So a quick trick I know is I look at this 5,000 right here and I ask myself how many 5s go into this 8,000 right here. Well, 5 times 1 is 5. 5 times 2 is 10. So it must be 1. So I put a 1 right here. Some of you might be saying, well, what happened to the 8, the 0, and the 0? Why am I putting the 1 way over there? Well, because the number is too small. We have to go all the way until we can fit that 5,280 into the number inside, the 8,000. Let me erase this really quick. So we just multiply, and we say 1 times 0 is 0, 1 times 8 is 8, 1 times 2 is 2, and 1 times 5 is 5. Then we subtract. 0 minus 0 is 0. We cannot subtract 8 from 0. We can't subtract 2 from 0, so we can't borrow. So we're going to have to borrow way over here. So the 8 becomes a 7. This 0 becomes a 10. Now this 0 right here is saying, hey, wait a second, I need to borrow. So we need to borrow from this 10. It becomes a 9. And this 0 right here becomes a 10. 10 minus 8 is 2. 9 minus 2 is 7. And 7 minus 5 is 2. Now, if you look closely, you'll see that this number is too small. So to continue, we're going to need to add a decimal, and this allows us to add a couple zeros. Then we continue this line. We need to bring this decimal straight up. This 0 is going to come straight down and make 27,200. So we ask ourselves now, how many 5s go into that 27? Well, 5 times 5 is 25. So let's give 5 a try. We put 5 right here, and let's multiply. 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 8 is 40. We're going to carry the 4. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 4 is 14. We're going to carry the 1. 5 times 5 is 25, plus 1 is 26. We are going to subtract again. 0 minus 0 is 0. 0 minus 0 is 0. We cannot subtract 2 minus 4, so we're going to have to borrow from this 7. He becomes a 6. That 2 becomes a 12. 12 minus 4 is 8. 6 minus 6 is 0 and 0, so we're left with 800. Again, we have another 0. We can bring it straight down, and we get 8,000. Really quick, without even wasting time, you know this 5 can only go into this 8 one time. And the directions say we're estimating to the nearest tenth, which is right here. So I really don't have to waste my time because I already know the answer is going to be 1.5 because this number right here is going to be less than 5. So really you don't have to waste your time. We know the answer is going to be 1.5 miles. So right here I put 1.5 miles as my estimate or my approximation in miles. All right, there's day 1. Let me clean this up really quick and we'll take a look at day 2 before I set you free. Day 2, he went to watch a movie and stopped at the burger restaurant and pet shop on the way. Including the stops, how far did he travel to get to the movie theater from the house? So this problem's a little easier. We don't have to calculate it into miles. All we do is count the squares and figure out how many feet it is. So it's a little easier. So he is starting off at his grandma's house. So he's going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He goes 9 squares to get to the burger restaurant. He orders a burger, some fries, and a soda, and he comes back out and starts heading to the pet shop. So he's going to come out, so we have to count this square right here again because he's coming out of the burger restaurant. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He goes 7 squares. He walks into the pet shop, plays with the puppies, holds a couple kitty cats, and then he leaves to walk to the movie theater. So again, we have to count this square right here because he's coming out of the pet shop. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He walks into the movie theater. He orders a large popcorn and goes to see a movie. That was 8 squares. So if we add this together, 9 plus 7 is 16, and 16 plus 8 gives us 24. So all we do is multiply 24 times 800 because 1 square equals 800 feet. Remember, I don't care about these 2 zeros right here until I'm done. So all I'm going to do is multiply 8 times 24. 8 times 4 is 32. So I write a 2 right here, carry the 3. 8 times 2 is 16 plus 3 gives us 19. Then I put back in the 2 zeros because there was 2 zeros right there. So I get 19,200 feet. And I do not have to calculate that into miles. So this is what I like you to do. I like you to do day 3, day 4, and day 5 on your own. When you're finished, come back to me and we will go over your answers. See you in a bit. Welcome back. You were supposed to do day 3, day 4, and day 5. By the way, if this is really easy for you, you don't have to listen to me. If I'm going too fast, you can always press pause and rewind. That's the great thing about having a video. So don't panic if you say, I don't get it. Just stop it, take a break for a second, rewind, and listen to it again. Okay, let's take a look at day 3. Day 3 says he decided to go climb Cousin Fred's treehouse, which is located on H Street. How far is the treehouse from Grandma's house? Again, it does not say anything about miles, so all we do is keep it in feet. And here is H Street, and here is the treehouse. So we start from Grandma's house, and we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So he went 11 squares. Again, each square is 800 feet. So all we do is multiply 11 times 800. I do not care about these zeros, so I just do 8 times 11, which equals 88. And then I add back in the 2 zeros to give me 8,800 feet. So I write 8,800 feet right here. You notice how I always label my answer, because sometimes we're doing feet and sometimes we're doing miles. So make sure you label your answer to know it is in feet or miles. Let's take a look at day 4. He helped Uncle Frank on his farm and spent the night. The entrance to the farm is located on J Street. Approximately how many miles did he travel to get there? So first off, let me clean this up. So on J Street is the entrance right there. And on this problem, we do have to calculate into miles. So it's a little more time consuming, a little more difficult. Also, we have a couple different ways of going. He could walk down this and go to E Street. He can come down here to go to H Street. You have different choices. And honestly, the directions never say it has to be the shortest route. So really, you could do any route you want. Just don't go crazy, because you're making yourself do more work. I'm trying to keep this easy, so I'm trying to find the shortest distance, which I think will be H Street. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. And then he walks into the farm to help his Uncle Frank. So he went 26 squares. So I take this 26 and I first multiply it by 800 to convert it to feet. I do not care about those 2 zeros at first, so I just do 8 times 26. 8 times 6 is 48. Carry the 4. 8 times 2 is 16 plus 4 is 20. Then I take these 2 zeros and I put them back in, and I get 20,800 feet. But the directions say how many miles. So we come up here really quick. I am going to write 20,800 feet, and I'm going to divide it by 5,280, because that's how many feet are in a mile. And I need to find out how many of those go into 20,800. Well, I'm looking at this number, and all I'm doing is looking at the 5 because that's the thousands, and I'm looking at the 20 because it's the thousands. And I ask myself, how many 5s go into 20? Well, 4 times 5 is 20. But here's the problem. You have some extra digits or amount here, which I think will make us too much or too high. So I think we need to try 3, not 4. I do 3 times 0 is 0. 3 times 8 is 24. Carry the 2. 3 times 2 is 6. Plus 2 is 8. And 3 times 5 is 15. I now subtract. I get 0 minus 0 is 0. I cannot do 0 minus 4, so I need to borrow from the 8. The 8 becomes a 7. The 0 becomes a 10. 10 minus 4 is 6. And 7 minus 8. Now the 7 is too small. And the 7 goes to the 0 and goes, can I borrow from you? And the 0 says, but I'm too small. I only have 0. So the 0 turns to the 2 and needs to borrow from the 2 first. The 2 turns into a 1. The 0 becomes a 10. And now he's like, yeah, I'm 10. And the 7 says, can I borrow from you now? And the 10 says, sure. So the 10 becomes a 9. And the 7 becomes a 17. 17 minus 8 is 9. And 9 minus 5 is 4. 1 minus 1 is 0, so we don't have to do it. Well, we have a problem again. We still have an amount, so we need to add a decimal and bring the decimal straight up, and that allows us to add a few zeros. You can add as many as you want, but the problem only asks us to go to the 10th place, which is right here, so I only add 2 zeros. So I bring down the 0 straight down. Let me write that in red. So now we get 49,600. And we need to ask ourselves, how many 5s go into this 49 right here? Well, 5 times 9 is 45. And I think that's a pretty good choice. So I'm going to put 9 right here. Let me erase this 2 so we don't get too confused. 9 times 0 is 0. 9 times 8 is 72. Carry the 7. 9 times 2 is 18. Plus 7 is 25. Carry the 2. And 9 times 5 is 45. Plus 2 is 47. And we are going to subtract. 0 minus 0 is 0. We cannot do 0 minus 2, so the 0 turns to the 6 and says, can I borrow from you? And the 6 says, sure, I'm big enough. So the 6 turns into a 5. The 0 turns into a 10. 10 minus 2 is 8. 5 minus 5 is 0. 9 minus 7 is 2. We bring down this other 0, and we get 20,800. And you ask yourself really quick, how many 5s go into that 20? Well, at the most it could be is 4. That's at the most. So the next answer is going to be 3 or 4, which tells us that the answer is going to be 3.9 because this next digit is going to be less than 5 again, and that means we keep it the same. Remember, 5 or higher, you will round up. If it's less than 5, you keep the number the same. So it tells us the answer is going to be 3.9 miles. Now, some of you might say, I want to prove this and I want to multiply, subtract, and do all the work. Well, you can if you want. I'm just trying to go over this video really quick to give you some help. So I really don't want to waste time doing all that because I already know it's going to be less than 5. We come down here and we know this is going to be 3.9 miles. Let me erase this stuff really quick to clean it up. Problem number 5. Problem 5. One of Uncle Frank's ducks bit Axel. Those crazy ducks. Wow. So he bit Axel. He walked to the hospital to get a tetanus shot and then walked home. Including the stop at the hospital, what was the actual distance he traveled? So he's walking from the farm to the hospital back to Grandma's house. Let's start counting the squares. It's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 squares to get to the hospital. He walks in the hospital. The nurse says,
"Come here, little boy. I'm gonna give you a shot."
and Axel's like,
"Ow, that hurt!"
then afterwards, he's going to walk back to Grandma's house. So he comes out of the hospital. He goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So he goes 24 more squares. We add it up. He goes a total of 45 squares. Now, this problem never said anything about miles, so we keep it in feet. So all we need to do is times 45 times 800 because each square is 800 feet. But again, I don't care about these two zeros, so I just do 8 times 45. Let's change the color. 8 times 5 is 40. Write a 0, carry a 4. 8 times 4 is 32, plus 4 is 36. Then I bring back these two zeros, and I get 36,000 feet. So our answer is 36,000 feet. And I label my answer feet, so I know the difference between feet and miles for my answers. Alrighty, so why don't you try day 6, day 7, and day 8 on your own? Come back to me when you're done, and we will check your answers. Welcome back. You were supposed to do day 6, day 7, and day 8 on your own. Let's take a look at day 6. He decided to go visit the local castle located on 6th Street. Approximately how many miles is it from the house to the entrance to the castle? For this one, we have to count the squares, change it to feet, and then change it to miles. So it's a little more difficult. So he's heading for the castle, and the castle is right here. So we need to count the squares. But here's the thing. He has a few ways of going. And again, I'm trying to do the less work possible, so I'm trying to find the shortest distance. And I think the shortest distance would be to go through E Street. So if we go through E Street, we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. So he's going to go 28 squares. And I think that's the shortest distance, so that's the way I'm going to go. And I take those 28 squares and times it by 800. Again, I don't worry about the zeros, so I do 28 times 8. And 28 times 8, 8 times 8 is 64, carry a 6. 8 times 2 is 16, plus 6 is 22. And then I put back in the 2 zeros to get 22,400. So then I'm going to come up here. I have 22,400. And I'm going to divide it by 5,280 feet, which equals 1 mile. I ask myself how many 5s go into that 22. And I know it is 4 because 4 times 5 is 20 and 5 times 5 is 25. So it must be 4. 4 times 0 is 0. 4 times 8 is 32. Carry the 3. 4 times 2 is 8 plus 3 is 11. Carry the 1. 4 times 5 is 20 plus 1 is 21. I am going to subtract. I get 0 here. I cannot subtract 0 minus 2, so 0 goes, hey, 4, can I borrow from you? And 4 says, sure! So the 4 becomes a 3, the 0 becomes a 10. 10 minus 2 is 8, 3 minus 1 is 2, and 2 minus 1 is 1. So I end up with 1,280. Well, again, I need to add a decimal, bring it straight up. And by adding a decimal, this allows us to add a couple zeros to help us keep dividing. So we bring down the 0 right here. Let me change this back to green. And we get 12,800. Now we ask ourselves, how many of these 5s right here go into 12? Well, 2 times 5 is 10. 3 times 5 is 15. So I assume it's going to be 2. Let me add a little line there. So I put 2 right here, and I multiply. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 8 is 16. Carry the 1. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. And 2 times 5 is 10. Again, I am going to subtract. I get 0. I cannot subtract 0 minus 6, so the 0 turns to the 8 and says, hey, buddy, can I borrow? And 8 says, sure. So the 8 becomes a 7. The 0 becomes a 10. 10 minus 6 is 4. 7 minus 5 is 2. 2 minus 0 is 2. I can bring down this other 0, and I get 22,400. And again, some of you might say, let's divide again and waste time. But you don't have to do that, because this 5 right here can only go into 22 at the most 4 times, because 5 times 5 is 25. So we know this number right here cannot be bigger than 5. So we cannot round up. We have to keep the answer the same, which would be 4.2 miles. So we don't have to waste time dividing again. So our answer is 4.2 miles to walk to the castle. Let me clean this up really quick. Day 7. He went to the park to play football with some local kids. What is the distance from the house to the park? Again, it doesn't say anything about miles, so this problem's a little easier. We just have to calculate the feet. The park is right here, so we need to count the squares. So we go from grandmother's house. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. And he walks into the park to play football with some of the local kids. So we went 18 squares. And again, we need to multiply 18 by 800. But we don't care about these zeros right there. So we just do 8 times 18. 8 times 8 is 64. Carry the 6. 8 times 1 is 8. Plus 6 is 14. Then we bring back these two zeros, and we get 14,400 feet. So I write 14,400 feet. Well, the last day Axel's visiting his grandma. His grandma's all sad. "Oh, Axel, I'm gonna miss you." And Axel's like, "Yes, Grandma, I'm gonna miss you too." So, on the way to the airport, Axel's grandmother took him to the donut shop for a pre-flight snack, including the donut stop. About how many miles did they travel to the airport? So Grandma, being the cool grandma she is, let me clean this up really quick. She takes him to the donut shop, which is right there. So they go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 squares to get to the donut shop. Axel and Grandma go order a dozen donuts. Yummy, yummy, yum. And then they head to the airport. So we need to count this square again because they're coming out of the donut shop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 18 more squares. And Grandma says, "Bye-bye, Axel." And Axel says, "Bye-bye, Grandma. See you soon." And the plane takes off.
That's crazy.
So let's figure this out. 17 plus 18 is 35 squares. And we're going to take the 35 and multiply it by 800 because each square is worth 800 feet. But I don't care about these zeros, so I just do 8 times 35. 8 times 5 is 40. I write a 0. I carry the 4. 8 times 3 is 24, plus 4 is 28. Then I take these two zeros and add them back in to get 28,000 feet. So if we come up here, we're going to have to divide 28,000 by 5,280 feet. Remember, 5,280 feet equals 1 mile. So we have to see how many of those go into 28,000. And again, I see this 5,000 right here, and I ask myself how many 5s go into that 28,000. Well, 5 times 5 is 25, and 5 times 6 is 30, so it must be 5. So I put a 5 right here, and then I multiply. 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 8 is 40. Carry the 4. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 4 is 14. Carry the 1. 5 times 5 is 25, plus 1 is 26. And then I subtract. 0 minus 0 is 0. 0 minus 0 is 0. 0 minus 4 you cannot do because a 0 is too small. So the 0 comes to the 8 and says, "Can I borrow Mr. 8?" And Mr. 8 says, "Sure, I'm big enough." So the 8 turns into a 7, and the 0 turns into a 10. 10 minus 4 is 6. 7 minus 6 is 1. And again, we need to add a decimal to keep on dividing. We bring that decimal straight up, and we can add 2 zeros to help us divide. We bring down the 0. Let me change the color back to red, and we get 16,000. So we ask ourselves how many 5s, or this 5,000 right here, goes into this 16 or the 16,000. Well, 3 times 5 is 15. Now the question is, if I multiply this 280 by 3, would it make it too big? And I don't think it will. So if we put a 3 right here, we multiply. 3 times 0 is 0. 3 times 8 is 24. Carry the 2. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 2 is 8. And 3 times 5 is 15. Almost worked perfect. So we're going to subtract again. 0 minus 0 is 0. 0 minus 4. Well, the 0's too small. So the 0 turns to the 0 next to him and says, hey, can I borrow? And the 0 says,
What are you talking about? I'm too small.
so then he has to go to the 6 and borrow from the 6. And the 6 says,
All right, I'll let you guys borrow.
so the 6 turns into a 5. This 0 right here turns into a 10. But he needs to let the other 0 borrow. So he turns into a 9. And then this other 0 turns into a 10. 10 minus 4 is 6. 9 minus 8 is 1. 5 minus 5 is 0. And 1 minus 1 is 0. I bring down the other 0 and I get 1,600, which, if we look at this and this, we already know it's too small. So there's no way this number right here is going to be bigger than 5, so we do not have to round up. So the answer is going to be 5.3 miles. Then we come down here and we write 5.3 miles. That is the final answer. We are done. I hope I helped, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for your support. See you next time.